Today, we're diving deep into the legal minefield hidden behind two simple words, I do. It's a phrase that kicks off one of the biggest chapters in a person's life, right? But what happens when that beautiful promise is actually against the law? We all think of marriage as this super personal, emotional thing, a union of two hearts, and it is. But here's the thing we often forget. It's also a serious, ironclad legal contract, and the state has a whole rulebook for it. If you break those rules, the consequences can be way bigger than just a broken heart. You could actually be committing a crime. So to really get our heads around this, we're going to treat it like a legal investigation. We've got 3 case files to open up, each one showing us a different way a marriage can be illegal. After that, we'll deliver the verdict. Ready? Let's get into it. Okay, first things first. In this section, we're setting the stage. Because really, before you can understand what makes a marriage illegal, you gotta know what makes one legal to begin with. I want you to think about it like this. The state is basically a silent partner in your marriage. It's like a co-signer on your marriage certificate. It's not just there for the party, it's there to validate the whole contract. And in exchange for all the perks, like inheritance rights and tax breaks, the state insists that the deal is legit and stable. And that's exactly why there are so many roles. All right, let's crack open our first case file. We're talking about the crime of bigamy, spelled out in Article 349. This is probably the one you've heard of, and it's built on a pretty straightforward rule. One spouse at a time. Sounds simple, but trust me, when we get into the details, it gets complicated fast. At its core, the idea here is deceptively simple. One person, one legal marriage. That's it. For the law, this is like a fundamental rule of the road. It's not really about love or morality, it's all about legal clarity and keeping things orderly. Your legal status can only say married next to one other person's name at any given time. So here's a great way to picture this. Imagine your right to be married as a single parking space. Just one. When you have a valid marriage, your car is parked in that spot. It's officially occupied. You literally cannot park a second car in there until the first one has been legally driven away. Bigamy, that's just trying to double park. And the law is a tow truck that says, nope, not on my watch. Now, to really dissect a crime like bigamy, lawyers have this awesome framework. First, they look at the guilty act, the actus reus. That's the physical thing you did. Second, they look for the guilty mind, or mens rea. That's your intention. Then we'll look at the circumstances around it, and finally, the harm it causes to society. So what's the actual actus reus here? What's the physical crime? It's the action. It's the moment you sign that second marriage license, go through that ceremony, and say I do again, all while that first marriage is still legally a thing. The crime isn't just living with 2 people. It's the official, formal, legal act of creating that second contract. That's the trigger. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This is the mens rea, the state of mind. Just doing the act isn't enough. You have to mean it. A prosecutor has to prove that you knew you were still married. You knew your legal parking spot was taken, and you decided to shove a second car in there anyway. It's all about that knowing intention. So how do you legally free up that parking spot? Well, the law is super strict about this. There are only 2 ways. The first is a legal dissolution. That means a formal court order, like an annulment or a final divorce decree. The second way is way, way rarer. A court has to declare your missing spouse presumptively dead. And listen, just being separated for 20 years or thinking your spouse is gone doesn't count. You need that official piece of paper from a court. No exceptions. Okay, presumptively dead sounds like something out of a movie. And honestly, it's a huge legal deal. This isn't just assuming someone's gone because you haven't heard from them. No, it's a formal court process. You have to go to a judge, show evidence your spouse has been missing for a long time, usually 4 years or more, and prove you've looked everywhere for them. Only then might a judge issue an order declaring them legally gone, and even then, it's just for the purpose of letting you remarry. So why is the law so tough on this? Well, it's because this is absolutely not a victimless crime. Bigamy creates a total legal nightmare. I mean, think about it. Who's the real spouse? Who gets the house when someone dies? What's the legal status of the kids? It creates this tangled mess that can take courts years to sort out, and that's the exact opposite of the stability that marriage laws are supposed to create. But the law isn't totally black and white. It looks at the context. A court will consider things that make the crime worse, aggravating factors. Like, was this person a con artist marrying people for their money? That's way worse than a mitigating factor, like someone who genuinely but mistakenly thought their divorce papers were final. That good faith belief might not get you off the hook, but it could definitely affect the punishment. And the penalty? Whoa, this shows you exactly how serious this is. We're not talking about a fine or a slap on the wrist. The sentence is prisión mayor, which is a prison term of 6 to 12 years. Yeah, that's some serious time. And it's meant to send a crystal clear message. Do not mess with the legal definition of marriage. All right, let's move on and open case file number 2, which deals with Article 350. Now, this is different. This isn't about already having a spouse. This is about the marriage you're entering right now, having some kind of fatal flaw baked into it from the very beginning. The problem isn't an old marriage, it's the new one. Let's make sure we nail this distinction down because it's important. Article 349, bigamy, is a problem of quantity. You have one marriage too many. Article 350, on the other hand, is a problem of quality. The one marriage you're trying to create is being built on a rotten foundation. The issue is inside the marriage itself. Let's go back to our house metaphor. Think of the law as the official city blueprint for building a marriage. Article 350 is what happens when you ignore that blueprint. Getting married through fraud? That's like using sawdust instead of concrete for your foundation. Ignoring age requirements? That's like building without getting a single permit. No matter how you slice it, the house you built is legally condemned from day one. So, the law is pretty specific about how you can mess up this blueprint. You could fail to do the basic paperwork, like getting a valid marriage license. Or you could ignore a serious legal roadblock, what they call an impediment, like being too closely related. And then there's the worst case scenario, using violence, threats, or lies to trick or force someone into saying I do. And let me tell you, the law has zero patience for forced marriages. Consent is the absolute bedrock of any contract, but especially for something as personal as marriage. This quote from the law itself shows that if you use force or fraud, it's not just a small detail, it's a huge deal. It automatically cranks the penalty up to the maximum level. The law is basically saying, we will protect a person's free will to marry at all costs. And you can see the consequences right here. Any marriage that's illegal under this article is a big deal, carrying a penalty of prisión correccional. But look closer. The law saves its harshest punishment for those who use force or trickery, which just shows how seriously it takes the violation of someone's personal freedom. Okay, time for our final case file, and this one has a twist. So far, we've been focused on the couple, but now we're going to flip the script and look at the person performing the ceremony, the officiant. What happens when they're the one breaking the law? That's what Article 352 is all about. Let's go back to our house building metaphor one last time. In this scenario, the officiant, the judge, the priest, the minister, they're the licensed city inspector. Their job is to make sure the marriage house is built to code. Article 352 is the law that punishes an inspector who knows the building is faulty but stamps approved on it anyway. It's an abuse of their power. And the law is super specific about who can commit this crime. It's not just anybody. This law only applies to people who have been given legal authority by the state to perform marriages. They're held to a higher standard because in that moment, they're basically acting as an agent of the law itself. And here we go again with intent, that crucial mens rea. It's everything. An officiant who gets tricked by a couple with a fake license, they might have a defense. This crime is about an officiant who knows there's a problem. They know one of the people is underage. They know the license is phony, and they go through it anyway. It's a deliberate choice to break the rules they swore to uphold. Now, this is pretty interesting. Unlike the other laws we've looked at, this one doesn't give a specific prison sentence. It points to a whole separate rulebook, the marriage law. And that's really significant. It tells us this isn't just a crime, it's a professional violation. The punishments are designed for their role. Fines, maybe jail time, but most importantly, they could be disqualified, losing their power to ever perform a marriage again. Okay, so we've examined all 3 case files. We've looked at bigamy, marriages that are flawed from the start, and officiants who break the rules. Now let's zoom out, put all the pieces together, and figure out the big picture. Why do these laws even exist? What are they really telling us? Looking at this chart, you can really see the legal hierarchy. Bigamy is clearly at the top, seen as the most serious offense with that max sentence of 12 years. Right below it, you've got illegal marriages, especially those involving force. And then the illegal ceremony has its own category. But let's be clear, the law considers all of these to be serious criminal offenses. So what's the big takeaway? At the end of the day, these laws aren't just about punishing people. They're like guardrails. The state puts them up to protect one of society's most important institutions.
They're there to stop people from being exploited, to make sure there's no confusion about who gets what, and to protect kids. It's all about maintaining social order by protecting the marriage contract itself.
And that brings us to one last thing to chew on. We've seen exactly how and where the law draws a very clear line in the sand. Marriage is this deeply personal promise, but it's also a very public contract. And as our society keeps changing, the debate over that line, how much the government should be involved in a personal commitment, is only going to continue. There's no easy answer, but knowing where that line is today is a pretty powerful place to start. Definitely something worth thinking about.